Hello and welcome to this special edition of the State of the Economy. The July PMI or Purchasing Managers Index numbers have just come in, and the July number is lower than what it was in June. It's come in at 46 compared to 47 in June. Both indicate contraction of the economy. Anything under 50 is contraction. The labour data from CMI also shows that after a distinct improvement in June from April and May levels, both the labour participation and the unemployment numbers have not improved in July. Well, I have with me someone who's best placed to speak about the state of the economy from the labour point of view. Manish Sabharwal, Chairman and Managing Director, Teamlease Services, which is India's largest staffing and human capital firm. Teamlease has over 95,000 employees in 1,800 cities and is implementing India's first vocational university in Gujarat. Also the first national PPP apprenticeship program. Manish is member of the RBI board. He's member of the National Skill Mission and the Central Advisory Board of Education. Well, Manish, I'm saying all this. Thank you first very much for joining me. I think Manish is at a vantage point when it comes to the labour market, and also he is on several policy-making bodies in an advisory or in a decision-making capacity. Well, first up, Manish, are you worrying that the economy is stalling in June, stalling in July versus June, or do you think things are on the mend?
Well, I think it's unmodelable. I think it is very irresponsible to put out unemployment numbers right now. First of all, India's problem isn't jobs, it is wages. But, you know, I saw the 28% unemployment number for April come down to 8%. I mean, that's like saying unemployment on Sunday afternoon is 75%, right? I mean, your office is closed. So when customers have been forced on strike, you know, this kind of precision in unemployment is microscopically precise, but macroscopically confused in my mind. I mean, we have to answer three questions, which nobody on planet Earth can. One is around the virus, second is around consumption, and third is around professions. So the most important question is, are we at the start, middle of the virus? I think everybody has a model, but nobody can tell you for sure. Second is consumption. Will consumers be frugal or will they be hedonistic? Will companies be frugal or hedonistic? You know, we've learned that you have to eat, but you don't have to eat out. I mean, so I think that the need, want, and desire sort of partition which a lockdown has done has important implications, and everybody has models, but nobody can tell you for sure. And from my vantage point, the third question of frontline professions which can't be done with social distancing. You know, China's farm to non-farm transition happened to factories. India is happening to sales, customer service, logistics, hospitality, and construction, and those jobs can't be done. So I think the data is just too noisy right now. I think the noise to signal ratio will only become clear when we know when the lockdown is ending and when we have some visibility on the virus.
Okay. Oh, yes, that's a comprehensive answer by way of a perspective that we shouldn't be looking for certainties. But you would be better placed to even speak about trends. Some cities like Mumbai and Delhi are probably, getting over the worst of the virus, and maybe some migrant labor is even returning. Are you seeing that kind of recovery in terms of sales and service jobs that you are referring to?
Oh, absolutely. I think the main point about COVID 4 months into the lockdown is we are all in the same storm, but we are not in the same boat. You know, from a region perspective, from a company perspective, how much inbound migration, outbound migration you have. From a company's perspective, how much debt you have, how much client concentration you have. So I would say that, you know, across the board, it would be premature and irresponsible to look for trends. But within cities, within industries, I mean, FMCG is back to more than 100% capacity because they had stock depletion. But out of our 3,000 customers, most of them are only targeting 25 to 50% right now till they have visibility. And migrant labor was never the binding constraint for going back to 100% capacity utilization. I mean, there are 70 million migrants, 30 million of those are dependents, about 4 to 7 million went home. So when most companies are only looking at 25 to 50% capacity utilization, and I think that's what is responsible right now, labor is not the binding constraint. But yes, a lot of migrant labor is coming back, and as it was expected. Even when they came the first time, they weren't running towards cities, they were running away from villages. So I think labor is not the binding constraint. As soon as we start getting some visibility, which in some cities has already begun, I think we could get back much of the lost sort of demand pretty quickly.
So how is the demand for labor? You spoke about the demand for labor being the constraint because many people don't want to staff completely. Is it 25% back up? Are we at 50% of July ago levels?
Yes, I would say about 25 to 50, depending on the city, depending on the industry, except exceptions like FMCG, which is back to 100 and can't find people. E-commerce is back to 100. So I think that, as I said, we're all in the same storm, but not in the same boat. The digitization super cycle is setting off a hiring frenzy in some industries, which obviously are benefiting from this mandatory global literacy program for digitization. E-commerce is one of them. FMCG is one of them because of the stock depletion, not the digitization super cycle. So my sense is, I think that there will be cities, there will be industries, and there will be companies which will gain from this COVID, come out with much larger market shares. I mean, we don't need 63 million enterprises in India. And so I think that, yes, there will be some pain, and some of that pain will be good for some companies, some cities, and some industries.
Okay. Well, before I come to policy, one other trend which people are pointing out too. In the early stages, we were all gung-ho about rural demand. One, because a lot of labor had gone back, and another because the government was spending more on MNREGS, the PM Kisan Yojana, and other programs which put money in rural areas. But now that feeling, at least one of the trends people are reading is that as COVID, peaks off in the urban agglomerates and goes towards tier 3 and tier 4 cities, rural demand is fading. Your thoughts on both rural demand and its fading hypothesis?
Well, it hadn't exploded in the first place. 45% of our labor force, which works on farms, only generates 14% of our GDP. So the only way to help farmers is to have less of them. So I think it was a little premature, if not silly, to believe that sending all our labor force back in agriculture would somehow be good for demand. So I think that a lot of rural economy depends on remittances from cities. So I think the spike in demand was, again, it was noise to signal ratio was misread. I think that obviously the crop has been good, but that'll create its own problems because of the oversupply in 2-3 months. The government might have to support prices. So I'd say that let's not look for magic bullets here. The rural economy is 45% of our labor force working on farms is one of the reasons India is poor. The only way to help farmers is to have less of them, and COVID isn't going to change that trajectory.